Hi guys, my name's Arran. This is the tutorial series for Attack the Horde. Okay, so I'm going to open up Kismet again, and what we're going to do now is create a kill counter. So yeah, as you can see there, I've set my max agents to 5. I also have a spawn rate of 4, so that I have 5 agents on maximum, and it spawns every 4 seconds. My spawn rate is 4, sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to select all of the spawn points in my level, and I'm going to right click and go to new event and create an agent reached for each one of these, and then I'm just going to space them out a little bit, and then I'm going to drag out the agent for each one of these into a blank variable. I'm then going to go to new action, event attached to event, and I'm going to plug that into the spawned output, and I'm going to plug the attachee into my blank variable, and I'm going to input that pawn to pawn death and plug the instigator into there as well. Okay, so basically what this means is when the player spawns, output this variable to it, and then when it has actually spawned, attach the death event to the player. So when they die, I want it to trigger this sequence. So I'm going to create a new add int. I'm going to create the variables for those. So I'm going to put in my kill count named variable. I'm going to plug that into B and int result, and then I'm going to make sure that the original int is set to 1. So every time the enemy dies, it adds 1 to my kill count. And then I want to do the activate remote event stat display. So then that's saying I want it to. That's saying that I want it to update the score. When an enemy spawns, so we have our first problem. So the enemies are spawning okay, but when they do spawn they can't move. Now this is because you need to add a delay to the spawn points. When it's attaching something to it, for some reason it sticks. So I'm just going to add a 0.5 delay, trigger delay to my agent reached, and now I'm going to play, and let's have a look around, and they all seem to be running out of that fine now. So now let's try and kill them. Okay, yeah, so now I'm getting an increase on my score, which is good. So that's the job done for my kill count. Now I want it so that the enemies can take the lives. So I'm going to select the objects where my lives are going to be. Okay, so now I'm going to create the new events for these. So the same way as I created the previous ones, just making sure I've got the agent reached events on the side where my lives are going to be. So this is basically saying once my enemy reaches these points, I want it to take a life, subtract it, and I want it to do a little bit of extra stuff as well. So I'm just going to plug a subtract int into all of these. I'm going to create a new int for my A variable, and then I'm going to have a named variable which is going to be my health, and I basically just want to subtract 1 from that, so put 1 into there and plug the health named variable into B and int result. Okay, so Okay, so my health default's at 10. Ah, that's it. I just remembered that I need to add this stat display update, so it updates the health every time I make a kill, or every time the agent reaches a point. So once it reaches there, okay, so the agent's reaching the point and it knows that it needs to do something about the number, but unfortunately it's not doing the right thing. So I basically just want to set the trigger delay again to 0.5, and I want to do that to all of these. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so the Vikings are reaching point and they're taking away, so I've got 5 enemies there and I've got 5 sacks left, so that's correct. Good. Okay, so now I'm going to go to new condition and compare int. And I'm going to plug this into the subtract int section. So this is basically me creating an end game sequence. So what I want to do is compare my health between with 0. So if my health is either equal to 0, then I want it to trigger the end game sequence. But if it's more than 0, then I want it to continue updating the stat display and also doing a few little extra bits as well, which we'll go into later. Okay, so I'm just going to plug the stat display into A is more than B. So if the health is more than 0, then update the stats. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is add the sacks to the add the lives to the scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my my sacks full of gold. I'm going to add them in as an interp actor, and I'm just going to scale these up a bit because they're quite small. And what I want to do is create 10 of them and just rotate them around so that they look like they've just been dropped there. Okay, so now I've got my sacks of gold in the scene representing my health. What I want to do is I want it to, when the Vikings reach that point, I want to attach the gold to the Viking so that he can run off with it. Okay, so what I want to do is create an object list variable, and I want to paste my the objects into that. So with the sacks selected, I want to insert those sacks into the object list, and I'm going to name those health bags. I'm going to name that health bags. Okay, there we go. And now we want to go to new action, object list, access object list. And I want to create a new blank variable for my output object, which is where the sack will go into. And I'm just going to put it at the index to tell it to reference from the index and plug that into the subtract int variable. I'm then going to create another blank variable, which I'm going to plug my plug all the agent reached outputs into, and I'm going to create an attach to actor as well. And I'm going to plug my output object from my access object list, which will be the sack that the index is pointing at, and I'm going to plug that into the attachment slot for the attach to actor. And then I'm going to plug the target into the blank variable which is plugged into my agent reached. So this means, so it looks at one of the health sacks which are in there, and it drops, it attaches that to the current Viking which has reached that point. And now I'm just going to create a quick add variable, so that once it's done this, it adds one to my index so that it's referencing the next sack. Okay, so we're ready to try this. Okay, so the enemies are getting the sack, but because I haven't done a hard attached and used and ticked relative offset and relative rotation, the sacks are staying in their respective place in relation to the enemy. So I'm just going to do is use relative offset and tick that and play that. So now when the enemy attaches, it's done it, but it's a little bit too close. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise the values up a little bit to about 30. That should probably do it. And now the enemies look like they're carrying off the sacks of gold. Okay, but now I've got another problem. When I kill the enemies or the enemy reaches their point, the sacks stay where they are in space, which I don't want them to do. I want them to disappear if we kill the enemy or if we reach the end point. So to do this, I'm going to open Kismet again, and we're going to create a bit more code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a switch, which I'm going to plug into my subtract int, and I'm going to make the link count on that 10 to represent each health. And now this will increment by itself by 1, so I'm going to go to new action, activate remote event, and I'm going to plug that into link 1. And I'm going to change the event name to sack1 active, sorry. And then I'm going to go to new event, remote event. I'm going to go to new action, actor, get location and rotation. I'm going to copy the first variable of object 0. I'm going to create a new blank variable and plug that into it. So this will be my first sack that's taken by will be taken by the Viking. I'm going to output my location, math get vector components, and I'm going to plug the in into the out of the get location and rotation, and I'm going to get the input vector and plug that into my vector coordinates. And this will output to floats, which I'll then be able to do a comparison for. I'm going to create a compare float, and then this is going to go into the outputs. And then I'm going to plug I'm going to plug the two variables into A slots for both of those. And then I'm going to plug a generic float value into B. I'm going to create a toggle hidden, and I'm going to put that into the target of, and I'm going to put the sack into that. I'm then going to create an AND gate, and I'm going to plug the AND gate's input into A equals B on both of those. So now what it's doing is it's comparing my X and Y coordinates to B, and if they are the same, or if they are both the same, then it will hide the sack. But I want this to loop round, so every 0.1 seconds it's going to perform this check. new action, set variable, float. And I'm going to create 2 of those. And I'm going to plug the start delay into the A is more than B and A is less than B on both of my compare floats. I'm going to take the value of both of the vector coordinates that are outputted as float values, and I'm going to set that to B. So once it's performed this check the first time, compares it the first time round, and it compares them to 0, it's going to add a delay on, and then it's going to set my previous vector coordinates into B, so when it does the check again, if they've changed, it knows to hide it or not. And then I'm going to finish this off by plugging the end float into the loop. So now, when my first Viking takes the sack, which is this guy over here, and I kill him, the sack should disappear, which it does. So that's worked. So now all that's left is to repeat that on all 10 of the sacks. But to speed this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this set here into a sequence. So I'm going to select all this code here which I've just created, accept my sack variable. I'm going to right click and go create new sequence, and I'm going to call this sack checker and now I've got this nice little tidy thing. If I double click on it, I'll go into it. So what I want to do now is create a new variable and call it an external variable, and I want to plug that into my targets for both of these. And now when I go back out of the sequence, I'll have a little value here which I can input in. So now all I'm going to do is replicate this for all 10 of these sacks and input my sack into the new variable for each one.